And gratitude for our speaker today, Sarah, for so generously sharing her time. Sarah's journey and insights serve as an inspiration to us all, reminding us of the resilience of the human spirit in face of adversity. Once again, I'd like to thank the committee and Sarah and all of you for making this a very special event. I would like to start now with introducing Phil.
Thank you, Kimberly, and thank you, Shelley. And thank you, Mothers Club. This is an honor to be here today. I work here, I coach football, so I'm used to talking to a different crowd. So hang with me. But just thank you, Mothers Club, for this event. I think this is a very special thing, and I'm so pleased to be a part of it. This introduction holds a very deeply personal significance in my life. Not only do I get to introduce my beloved wife, but also a woman of remarkable fortitude who has navigated tumultuous waters of breast cancer without unwavering strength. Behind her captive smile, which you will see a lot of that today, lies a silent battle, a testament to the resilience that dwells within her. Despite the shadow of adversity, her infectious personality shines bright, touching the lives of all who are fortunate enough to know her. And I think the ones that really know her know that that's true. Throughout the most challenging moments of her journey, she has shown immense bravery, determination, and an unshakable belief in herself, becoming a symbol of hope for those facing similar struggles. Today, she stands in front of you as a survivor, living proof of the resilient human spirit. I invite you all to join me in extending a warm and resounding welcome to my wife, Sarah Bachwitz, as she shares her story.
Thank you so much. Wow, Phil, you're already making me cry for that introduction. Off to a great start. I practiced this speech 100 times, and I never thought I feel so emotional just seeing all the faces in the audience here to support me today. So I appreciate you all so much. So thank you to the Mothers Club for giving a platform to share my story. I truly am so honored and excited to be here with you today. We all experience grief or some type of hardship in our life. It's part of living. I am sure there are some people in this audience that have had the thought before, this is not how my life was supposed to look, or this is not how my life was supposed to turn out. Today, I'm going to share my experience with those difficult moments, and I encourage you to reflect on your own experience with hardship and suffering as well. Before we get started, I am sure almost every person in this room has been touched by cancer in some way, whether it be yourself, a loved one, a friend. So I want to take a moment of silence to honor those who are with us wherever they're at on their journey. Thank you for coming. And also honor those who are no longer with us. Thank you. So there is no recipe book on how to handle suffering, and even if there was, I would probably screw it up because I'm not the best cook. So I know my situation could always be worse, and once again, I realize how blessed I am to be standing in front of you today. So this picture was taken 4 years ago. I was sitting in this audience listening to Robin Swoboda share her breast cancer journey. And let me tell you, never in a million years did I think I would be standing up here today. As you've already briefly heard about me in my introduction, there are some titles I want to add. Never miss a party, hype girl, best crock pot meal maker, lover of dirty martini and pickles. I probably could keep going, but I better stop now since Phil does work here and I don't want to get in trouble. Sorry, Phil. And a title that I never necessarily wanted, but has helped me grow in so many ways, breast cancer survivor. During my journey, I had people tell me, "You are so strong. I don't know how you are doing this." And the truth is, sometimes I didn't either. There were times on my journey where my light was barely shining. And throughout this talk, I'm going to tell you what helped keep my light burning, despite feeling like I wanted to give up sometimes. So let's start at the beginning. I will admit I am the definition of a troublemaker middle child. I grew up around the area. My parents are some of the most caring and hardworking people that I know. My dad is a retired pharmacist. He owned and ran Highlandsburg Pharmacy and never took a day off until the day he retired. Us girls would go on a vacation without him and leave him at home to work, go have fun. He did retire just in time to help me take care of Claire and myself while I was going through treatments. My mom, she's a retired nurse, postpartum nurse of 40 years, and I often like to refer to her as my BFF or twin, and I'm so happy to share that title with her. Love you, Mom. Both of my sisters are overachievers, I'll have to admit. My oldest sister Liz won a very prestigious award at the high school we attended. Coach Alexander did tell me I'm not allowed to say where I went to high school, but it starts with an H and it ends with an O-B-A-N. Don't shoot me, football moms, I'm sorry. Well, that prestigious award skipped a sister and went on to my youngest sister a few years later. So while they were busy winning all of these prestigious awards, I was getting in trouble for stealing political signs out of people's yards. I would have thought that was a federal offense. I also was a cheerleader and the only one on the varsity squad that could not do a back handspring. But they kept me on the team because I did a forward roll with so much spirit that they couldn't turn me down. As previously mentioned, I'm a nurse. I went away for college to the University of Toledo, moved back home, and started to pursue my psychiatric nurse practitioner degree as I was working on the detox unit at Summa Hospital. So in 2016, after a few years of living it up in my late 20s or whatever I call it, I decided I was going to give up on the dating scene. I was losing hope on meeting someone. Well, as fate would have it, I met Phil just a few months later. I would like to give proper credit to Darcy Alexander. I did not give her proper credit at my bridal shower for introducing us, so I would like to do that now. She was also part of my living it up phase in my late 20s, although she would definitely not approve of me saying that. Sorry, girl. She's a Walsh Jesuit alumni and also married to Nick Alexander, for those that may not know. So throughout my experience, I had a lot of what I like to call God wink moments. And for those that don't know what it means, I like to picture Jesus winking at you like, I got your back. So, when I mention my God wink moments, this is what I mean. I did want to let you know this is Father Frank approved. I didn't get your approval, but Father Frank did say I could display this photo. So after reflecting on meeting Phil, this is when I can say I first felt the God wink very strong in my life. Something inside me was telling me that being with him was just so right, and it felt so calm in my soul. So we moved quick. We got engaged just a year after meeting, got married less than a year after that on May 18th, 2018. I would like to say I did have 13 bridesmaids, if that tells you anything about who I am. I got pregnant with Claire just a few months after we got married. So now that I've gone into way too many details about probably what you didn't need to know, let's get on with it. So now comes what we're here to talk about today, my lump. I kind of feel weird talking about boobs and lumps in church, but this is why we're here, so let's get out of the way. So my lump, which we later ended up naming Jessie, because during the many appointments that Phil and I had, we were sitting waiting to be seen by a doctor, and we heard the nurses in the hallway go into a huge conversation about a horrible breakup that she went through just the night before. Well, she went on to tell the other nurse as we were overhearing everything. I love eavesdropping. About this horrible breakup, and her ex sounded like a real piece of work. And his name was Jesse, hence why my mom got the name. So I actually remember first finding Jesse when I was still pregnant with Claire. I was laying in bed and I thought I felt something suspicious in my left breast. And I had another God wink this time. But this time I did not listen. I went along to have Claire in April, and we were busy parents trying to navigate life with a newborn. Oh, there's our picture on our wedding. I forgot to advance the slide. No, I should have probably had you do it. Okay, there we are. We're all caught up. So on Claire's baptism day in July, I had a time what I thought was a clogged milk duct. I remember being up in my room as the after party was going on downstairs, and this memory sticks out because I hate missing a good party. So I was up in my room trying to figure all of that out, and it's just something didn't feel right. So I had 2 appointments that month, and we determined that it may be shrinking. So we will keep an eye on it. I had another God wink that I can remember very distinctly. I was sitting in the doctor's office about to check out, and my internal being was screaming at me, "Ask for an ultrasound." But I did not speak up, and I continued about my life. I went back to work, and I happened to see a job opening for Walsh University in the nursing program. I had minimal teaching experience, but knew I wanted to make a difference in young people's lives, and also have the summers off. Who am I kidding? My friend Lisa gave me the extra push I needed. I applied for the job, met the people, and absolutely fell in love. The God wink spiritual nudge was more of a spiritual push this time. I brought the decision to my family, my husband, and my sisters, because if you come from a family of girls, how can you not let them all weigh in? And honestly, I got a lot of pushback. For anyone who works in education, you may be able to guess why. But something inside my gut was telling me that working at Walsh University was the right decision. The God wink was back, and I accepted the position. And it was such a blessing that I did because of what was to come. Phil also started here in a new position that year as a school counselor. My lump never really went away, and one Friday, after a new employee orientation, I was sitting in my office and I just felt really funny. I thought, is my heart rate elevated? Am I having a panic attack? So as any sane nurse would do, I did my Apple Watch EKG. As we know, it's the expert, right? So it said my heart was fine. I was in normal sinus rhythm. But something inside me was telling me that something's not right. I even thought about driving myself to the ER, but what an inconvenience that would be. I'd have to make arrangements for Claire. Phil was coaching in a football game that night. My in-laws were coming up. So when my mother-in-law was in town that weekend, I turned to her and said, if I'm still complaining about this lump by my birthday, you need to have me call. Little did I know I would be shaving my head that year for my 31st birthday. I called the next week, met with the doctor, who finally met my concerns, and I was scheduled for an ultrasound that Friday. I stopped breastfeeding cold turkey, but my mind wasn't jumping to, it's cancer. I even went on a bike ride with my mom the day before the ultrasound, and believe me, I felt every bump. We even had to stop at Slay's, which is a local market, to get cabbage leaves to put in my bra as we rode back to our car. The next day, during the ultrasound, the tech left the room for a few minutes. This is when I started to become a little nervous. She brought the radiologist back in to look, and they decided it would be a good idea to get a mammogram and a biopsy on the spot. A lot was going on, and I told myself, I'm drying up, it's probably just that. The mammogram was first. I don't know if we have any moms in the room who tried to stop breastfeeding cold turkey, but the sweet mammogram technician imaginably kept a straight face as my milk shot across the room. By the time we were finished, there was a puddle in my shoes. Now on to the biopsy. Am I going to be able to drive after this, I thought? Phil was coaching in the game that night. My parents were out of town. Claire was with a sitter. So I really didn't have anyone or time to call anyone for a ride. So the biopsy was a little bit more painful, but I made it through. I met with my surgeon that day, who was absolutely amazing and went on to be my surgeon, and I asked her if I could continue to still train and run the Akron Half Marathon that I had been preparing for the following week. She had a look in her eye that I now know was major concern, because as she felt in my breast and she felt in my lymph nodes, I think she already knew. They told me it would take 3 to 5 days for my results to come back, and sure enough, it was 5. My mind went in every direction. This was one of the only times I saw my dad break down because of all of the unknowns. So they say you remember exciting times that happen in your life. The first day you buy your house, the day you get married, the day your children are born. This is true for the day I was diagnosed. It was a hot Wednesday afternoon, September 25th, 2019. I was waiting for the call all day. I felt like I was waiting to see if I was going to live or die. I even remember what I had for lunch that day, and if anyone cares, it was a salmon, Lux, and Keeper Everything bagel from Einstein's. I don't know who eats that on a hot day, I guess I do. A thought even popped in my head. This may be your last meal without cancer. When I got home that afternoon, I was sitting in my backyard trying to calm my nerves, and of all animals, I can't even make this up, a black cat literally came up to me. Not making that up. So that's honestly when I knew I was in trouble. So the call came in a little after 4:30 p.m., and I heard the doctor say on the other line, "You have cancer." The 3 little words you hope you will never hear. She went on to tell me more specifics, at least stage 2, maybe 3, we have to wait for more tests. As I was writing down all of the information on a torn up piece of paper in between sobs. By the time I got something on paper, it was already wet because it was covered in my tears. Luckily, I was not alone when I received the news. My dad and my 5-month-old daughter, Claire, were in the next room. My dad went into problem-solving mode and started to call my sisters as he put Claire in the stroller and was pacing up and down our street. I managed to get to the front porch and sit in our white rocking chairs and call Phil and get the words out in between sobs, and he came right home. The next few hours were a bit of a blur, trying to remember to breathe while trying to tell close family and friends. In this part of the story, I want to point out that suffering is shared. If you are close to me, you probably remember exactly where you were when you found out. For one of my best friends, Julia, it was sobbing alone underneath the staircase because she was away at a conference. For my mom, it was collapsing in front of the time clock at work. And for Phil, it was taking a knee on the football field because he lost his breath. Shared suffering is such a unique human experience. And I'm sure everyone in the audience has been a recipient to it or has experienced it. And it doesn't always have to be on such a huge scale. We can see this with our kids, right? When they hurt, we hurt. Although at the time, if you were the one struggling, you may not want to let others in or feel like a burden, but I encourage you in those moments that you are faced with hardship to let others in, however that looks for you. Maybe it's just to sit with you. And I promise the burden will not feel as heavy. During this time, the unknown and wondering was so difficult. I had a flood of thoughts in between panic. I'm only 30, why me, why now? I was overwhelmed with panic. I felt like a bear was chasing me. I somehow managed to force down a peanut butter and jelly sandwich that night, but I would have panic attacks in between bites. I would wake up not being able to breathe because I felt like someone punched me in the chest. During those acute moments of suffering, honestly, I don't know if there's anything anyone would have told me that would have made me feel better. I I just needed some time to process my thoughts and my fears, and I had to just get through it. But my light started to flicker. So I was forced in a way to either fight or give up, and giving up was not an option for me. Even though this is hard for me to admit, I may have thought about it at times. Sorry, does anyone have a tissue? This is awkward. So we found out a few days later it was triple negative breast cancer. It was a Friday night, and my surgeon called me personally. I was not expecting that call. Phil was coaching in a game that night. Why are all these things happening on a Friday? Really? Thank you so much. So it's fuzzy if I texted him mid-game or not to let him know the pathology of my cancer. Is this really what my life has come to? Triple negative breast cancer tends to be one of the more aggressive forms of breast cancer due to difficulty to treat and not as responsive to treatment and high reoccurrence rate. So I hit the jackpot. They also staged me as stage 3C. It was in many of my lymph nodes in my left arm and had also started into my chest wall. My friend told me once, "Sarah, you're a go hard or go home kind of gal." I wouldn't expect anything less. So to my surprise, that next morning, I woke up to a picture of my friend Lisa at the starting line of the half marathon with my face on a stick. She went on to run 13.1 miles with my stick face. Should have brought her today. And she cursed me every mile. So my schedule filled up fast. Bone scans, CT scans, echocardiograms, pretty much every test or scan that you could imagine. We even had to get a big calendar to put on our kitchen table just so we could keep track. Phil went with me to every appointment and read the book Stand By Her. He waited if he was not allowed back with me. He took notes, held my hand, let me cry, and was my rock, even though I know it was also tearing him apart. So I know this is a group of women. There are many caretakers, if not, we're all caretakers in the audience. Whether it be for an elderly parent, a friend, a child, a relative. So truly from the bottom of my heart, I really want to say thank you to all the caregivers. It's one of the most selfless acts as a person to care for someone else, and it's not easy. Oftentimes all the attention is on the patient because they're sick, and being a caretaker is just a really special thing. So thank you. Thank you all. So we were expected to make decisions about our future moving forward. Going through chemo tends to destroy a lot in your body, and your fertility could be one of them. So we came to the conclusion I wanted to start chemo right away, and we did not have time to look into alternative methods of fertility. We had the doctor tell us we had about a 12 to 14% chance to be able to have a baby after chemo. But my brain was focused on surviving, and we were so happy and blessed with Claire, so we decided to keep moving. One thing I had to learn quick during this phase was I had absolutely no control. And as humans, we want control. So feeling like I had no control and I was powerless was really, really difficult. During those first few weeks of tests, where everything felt like a blur and my light was flickering, the support that I received from family, friends, strangers, and community was truly unimaginable. If it was just me alone, there is no doubt my light would have gone out. But because of the kindness and prayers of others, I felt like I could hang on just a little longer. I received countless cards of support, meal train donations, a workout class dedicated to me, prayer chains, shirts made for us. I truly could go on and on and on. My students at Walsh University provided gifts. I went in the day after that I found out and lectured and shared the news with the class, and I had some students even cry with me. Walsh Jesuit here had pink shirts made, Sarah Strong. they just started working there just a few months before. Phil and I were so blessed to be at the jobs that we were at, and that was one of the biggest God moves of all. The support that I still receive is amazing. I had someone who I never met before who worked with Phil tell me that he's never missed a rosary in 30 years and he had been praying for me. Other women reached out that were on the cancer journey themselves and supported me. One in particular, that now has the title of my cancer mentor, is Michelle. She's a triple-negative breast cancer survivor, and she would be here today, but she's on a girls' trip to the Bahamas, so nothing else would stop her truly from being here today. But she became my cancer mentor, and she texted me inspirational messages and checked on me quite literally every day for 2 years, as she was going through, the journey herself. It's just a beautiful thing. She will always have a special place in my heart. So those are many examples of how others helped carry my torch and navigate the unknown, and I truly could not have done it without them. I did not know what was behind the corner, and I was terrified. So during that initial phase of suffering, the help and prayers of others helped keep my light shining. How beautiful is that, the moments when other people show up for you. So I had a plan. 16 rounds of chemo, which ended up being 8 because I tripled the dose of 1. A double mastectomy, radiation, and then go from there. It was time to fight. The boxing gloves were on. My dad made me do this boxing move anytime I was feeling weak or before chemo, and it's the jab, cross, uppercut. How'd I do, Phil? He made me practice. He said my cross looked too much like my uppercut. Once a coach, always a coach. So I will be using that to reference my treatment journey. So the first was the jab. The first 4 rounds of chemo were tough. It was 2 different chemotherapies. One got the term the red devil, probably because the red color, but also the way it made you feel. Some people have that one thing that they think about and they automatically become nauseous. For my one friend, it's mayonnaise. For me, it's the red devil. Something was just so disturbing watching the nurses double glove and gown as they slowly push this into your port while you're chewing on ice, trying to prevent mouth sores. They wore gloves and were so careful because if it dripped on your tissue, it could kill it. And I wasn't only welcoming this into my body, but into my veins. So my relationship status with chemotherapy was it's complicated. I hated getting it. It made me feel awful. It was breaking me down, but I knew it was saving my life. A week after my first chemo session, I turned 31. As you know by now, I decided to have a party, and I had Phil shave my head. I also dressed up that year as Uncle Fester for Halloween. It was a pretty easy costume, considering the circumstances. So as I was going through chemo treatments, I felt like I was living in a fog. The holidays were hard. I had a lot of guilt, not feeling my best to show up for Phil or Claire the way I wanted to. I remember Christmas morning thinking to myself, I am not going to let this cancer ruin my daughter's first Christmas. So I fought through the tiredness to open presents and watch her play, but I wanted to lie down. My mind was torn. I wanted to be involved and present, but I didn't feel good. I was able to finish chemo toward the end of January, but I had to wait for my body to bounce back before we scheduled surgery. During the acute phase of suffering, sometimes I felt like I might not make it, or I wanted to give up. Looking back, advice that I wish I could have given myself, or anyone who is in that phase now, is please just hang on. Time will keep moving and you will come out the other side. Although sometimes I was miserable, I made a choice to try to continue and experience life and joy. And Claire was truly my best teacher for that. She would slap my bald head and giggle, and I was mom to her no matter what. That gave me the strength that I needed to keep moving forward. So I felt like my life was split in two, before cancer and after diagnosis. Going through it, but life was just going on, and I wanted to escape it from my mind. I couldn't watch movies because as the credits would roll, I would be hit with a wave of panic and remember the reality of my situation. I remember this moment distinctly, probably because the Walsh football team finally broke their 23-game losing streak and won their first football game that year. My football moms were, yeah. I wanted to feel so happy, but I was so sad, and I felt so guilty that I felt so sad. I sobbed as I watched them celebrate on TV, and I was watching from my bed, wishing so bad I could be there, mostly to celebrate with Darcy, but also to give Phil a hug at the end of the game. I just wanted to go back to normal life. Throughout this initial treatment process, I was going through the stages of grief multiple times a day, which felt like days on end. Denial, anger, bargaining, depression. Later on came acceptance, that is still a work in progress. But I would have thoughts, this can't be happening to me. I am only 30. This is a bad dream, I will wake up soon. Please, why is this happening? I promise I will be a better person. I promise I will go to church every Sunday. Sadness and grief, feeling robbed of my new mom and wife experience with Phil and Claire. And anger. During this phase of suffering, I was angry and I wanted someone to blame. Was it the hospital? Was it the doctors? Was it myself? Too many fried pickles and dirty martinis? Was it God? So, back to fighting. We finished with the jab, now onto the cross. Surgery was scheduled February 18th. I want you guys to remember that day as it holds a big significance. Some cancer patients use this day for when their time starts, so their remission day or their no evidence of disease day. So February 18th was that day for me. So my labs took a dive the week before, so we were worried that we may actually have to delay surgery. But they did bounce back to a safe level to get it scheduled. I, of course, had to go see Ellen DeGeneres before surgery. We were lucky enough to get tickets. I remember wearing a mask on the plane and feeling so silly. But little did I know, just a month later, masks would be all we would see. The difficulty of surgery took me by surprise. I named my boobs Patoot and Stinkerwinker in the 6th grade. And to be honest, I was kind of mad at Patoot. He allowed this cancer to grow inside me. I did not think I would have a reaction that I did when I woke up. The surgery was intense. I spent one night in the hospital. I had a coworker who is now a dear friend come in on her day off and teach Phil and I how to deal with our drains, and she will forever be my nurse angel. The surgeon used the word "scooped them out" when she talked about my lymph nodes. It wasn't until a few days later, when I was finally getting a shower with the help of my mom and Phil, that I glanced up in the mirror and I was in complete shock and disbelief. The sounds that came out of my body I could not control. I sounded like a dying, wounded animal. I did not recognize the person staring back at me. My hair was gone, my boobs were gone, my scars were bloody. Everything I thought made me in that moment was gone. And that was one of my lowest points. My light that I tried so hard to hang on to and stay hopeful went out. The goal of surgery, post-mastectomy, and removal of lymph nodes is to have something called PCR, or pathological complete response. That means out of all the breast tissue that they take and lymph nodes that they take, that there's no signs of a tumor or cancer and that the chemo completely did its job. I was so nervous to get that call. I remember finally feeling hungry enough to sit down, and I was with my in-laws about to eat tacos when my surgeon called me. This is also very important for triple-negative breast cancer and survival. I unfortunately did not achieve PCR. There was still a tiny, tiny tumor detected in my breast and in my lymph nodes. Still, the surgeon was so happy because she said it is so, so tiny. We're so close to PCR. This is just as good. Still, my light was out. This is hard for me to talk about, but sometimes with suffering for me came a darkness. And I was not always sunshine and butterflies. Being positive was not always the most helpful for me in these situations. I knew the stats, and I knew the facts, and it was nice to have those people that could have some of those real conversations with me. So I needed the help of my friends and family more than ever. I started writing down funeral notes, meeting with lawyers, getting a will, and writing future letters to Phil and Claire to open on milestones. When she turned 16, her wedding day, I even wrote a letter to both of them if I do not make it. My friends and family reluctantly listened to me during this phase, knowing that it could have been a possibility, but also mutually supporting me to help bring me back up. If it was not for them, I don't know if my light would have started flickering again, but because of their unconditional love and carrying of my torch, I got into the ring for another round. I don't know if I don't have any shame in this, and I truly think it was part of the process for me and try to help control what I could control. You better believe Open Bar Funeral was on there. I wanted to be dark, and like I said, it was part of the process for me. So third was the uppercut. Radiation started after I healed up from surgery. We were in the middle of COVID. I remember on the road, I was like, wow, there's nobody up here. I can get here fast. So I remember thinking, wow, there's no one on the road. I can get here fast. So I had 6 weeks of radiation, 5 days a week. I was tired, but getting my energy back slowly. My flame started to burn a little brighter again, and I started praying and talking to God more, and feeling like I might have more of a chance of survival. I was getting more hope. I watched my skin burn and then fall off, but I acted like it was totally normal because I was just so ready to be back to normal life. I wanted this all behind me. We had Claire's first birthday party as a drive-by party, and my parents wearing N95s in my backyard. I finished radiation, and due to not having a complete response to chemo, I was supposed to be on an oral chemotherapy pill for 6 to 9 months called Lexoda. I started this shortly after radiation. I only took this for about a week and started to develop chest pain. Phil and I were on a walk with Claire, and I remember asking him if he knew CPR, 30 and 2. So I called the doctor when we got home from the walk, and she advised that I go to the ER. And of course, I drove myself. Well, sure enough, I had elevated troponins, which is a cardiac level, and I was in the 6% of people that couldn't take this oral chemotherapy pill because of cardiotoxicity. This did not feel as big of a blow as it should have, though. My light was brighter, and I had more hope and reserves at this point. I started feeling a sense of peace that I was going to be okay. I was able to get on a different medication they were using in a clinical trial called Keytruda, which was an immunotherapy that was given through my port every few weeks. I stayed on it for about 9 months and eventually stopped that following April due to some side effects. After the dust and chaos of treatment after the chaos, you know what I'm trying to say. This cough has me all messed up. So after the dust and chaos of treatment had settled, I was able to reflect on my relationship with God. I don't know what changed my mind, possibly a dose of perspective, my eyes were open to it, or growth. But I was not angry with him anymore. What I came to realize was God did not give me cancer. The fried pickles didn't either. But he put people and circumstances in my life because he knew it was going to happen. I met Phil. We got married right away. We were blessed with Claire right away. Both of us starting new jobs, We were right where we needed to be. And God was with me all along. From such a young age, I was drawn to the prayer footprints. I have a ton of trinkets, seashells with the footprints prayer, pictures, even a spoon with the footprints prayer on it that I've been collecting since a child. And I don't think it's a coincidence that I've been drawn to this prayer. So I'm going to share it with you now. One night I dreamed a dream. As I was walking along the beach with my Lord, across the dark sky flashed scenes from my life. For each scene, I noticed two sets of footprints in the sand, one belonging to me and one to my Lord. After the last scene of my life flashed before me, I looked back at the footprints in the sand. I noticed that at many times along the path of my life, especially at the very lowest and saddest times, there was only one set of footprints, and that really troubled me. So I asked the Lord, Lord, you said once I decided to follow you, you'd walk with me all the way. But I noticed during the saddest and most troublesome times in my life, there was only one set of footprints. I don't understand why, when I needed you the most, you would leave me. He whispered, my precious child, I love you and will never leave you, never, never. During your trials and suffering, when you only saw one set of footprints, it was then that I carried you. Sorry. By this point, my light was burning brighter. I was even able to support some young women going on the breast cancer journey themselves. Life started to make sense again. I was on a walk in early June 2021, just a few months after stopping immunotherapy, and I had an overwhelming feeling of peace and comfort come over me. I tend to find God in nature. And I truly had a feeling that I was going to get pregnant and it was going to be a boy, despite the 12% chance that we were given to have a baby naturally after chemo. Sure enough, I didn't know it was going to happen this quick, but just a few weeks later, to our surprise, we found out we were pregnant. Darcy threw us a gender reveal treasure hunt, and as Claire threw up the gold ball and it landed, blue smoke. It was a boy. My doctors didn't know how having immunotherapy in my system was going to react to me being pregnant so soon, because the goal of immunotherapy is to sniff out and kill anything foreign that it can find in your body. And I don't know if there's many studies of young women being on it and getting pregnant so quickly in the first place. Well, Benjamin came 2 weeks early and was born on February 17th, 2022, just a few hours before my 2-year no evidence of disease or remission date. If that's not the biggest God wink of all, I don't know what is. Navigating survivorship is part of the cancer journey. I don't know if the outside world understands how difficult it can be sometimes. Sometimes it can be extremely anxiety-provoking. You're not in active treatment, and now you're out into the real world. One of the hardest parts of survivorship for me is not being able to trust my own intuition when it comes to my health. I've been to the ER multiple times for migraines, thinking it's a brain tumor, for chest pain again and then again. I get scans for bones, hurting, thinking the cancer's in my bones, and also for coughs. My radiation lung can't hang either, so, it's a lot to process and take on. And survivorship still has its challenges. There are still many surgeries. In December of 22, I underwent something called the DEEP procedure for reconstruction and also a lymph node transfer to help with my lymphedema that I've been experiencing. And people still show up for me. I had people watch my children, meal trains. My friend Mallory came over because my hair was so greasy I couldn't stand it, and we did a whole hair washing station in my kitchen. I do still struggle with lymphedema. I didn't put my cool Michael Jackson glove on for you today. So sometimes all of these appointments feel like a second job. My physical therapist is even in the audience because I see her so often. We've become dear friends. So with triple negative, breast cancer, as I mentioned, there tends to be a high recurrence rate, about 40 to 50% in the first 5 years. And it can come back in your bones, brain, liver, and lungs. I would like to say I just celebrated 4 years last month and continue to have clear scans and no evidence of disease. I appreciate that. So living in this is not always easy. Sometimes I grieve. What has helped me in this stage has to be able to talk about it and talk about my struggles and my light sometimes flickering. Bringing awareness to this has helped me grow. I started a podcast with a friend from high school, Bree, who was also diagnosed in her 30s. Having opportunities like this helped me to feel more alive than ever before. I also often like to sit down and take a step back and just look around about how blessed I am. I've been taking more moments to be present and mindful and appreciate the little things, like letting the sounds of my kids' laughter fill my ears, feeling the sun on my face, and feeling the warmth in Phil's bear hug. And to be honest, except for a few girls' nights here and there, I don't know if there's much else that I need. And I have so much gratitude just for those simple moments. Suffering has become one of my greatest enemies, yet one of my best teachers. It has made it so sometimes I can't be present because of fear, but it has also made me so grateful for this life. It has caused me to reflect on who I am and strive to shine my light by living authentically and connecting with others on a deeper level. And for that, I am grateful. So in closing, life is filled with suffering and chaos, and no one really knows what could be lurking around the corners. But within us, our light can shine through tough times. We may not have control over the cards we are dealt, but you do have control on how you play that deck. And accepting that is one of the hardest lessons to learn. I chose to move forward with help sometimes, which helped me slowly gain more hope and start living again. So those in the audience who may feel in the dark, alone, or suffering, I hope you can find a way to make that choice, no matter how small. Maybe it was coming to this talk today to ignite your light and continue to make those choices every day until your path is a little brighter. Wherever you are on your journey or hardship, I can't promise that it's going to be okay, but I can promise you will get through the storm if you open your eyes to those little moments of magic and joy and cherish those. Choose to keep your light shining, and don't forget to have some dirty martinis and pickles along the way. Thank you so much.